This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Sem Yankees Show. I'm calling it the Dr. Sem Yankees and Book Show because today we're probably not talking much Yankees at all. Today we'll be talking a lot about books. And we have one of my favorite people in the whole world, Dan Schlossberg, the author of this wonderful new book, The Home Run King, The Remarkable Record of Hank Aaron. And Dan will be joining us in just a moment, but I'd like to remind everyone to make today a great day. And the way to make your day great is to appreciate all that's good that's around you. Take the time to notice the good, not necessarily all the things that bother us, and then perpetuate the good by paying it forward and doing great things to help make the lives of other people greater. And one person who helps make my life greater all the time, we work together with the Internet Baseball Writers Association, and he's just a delight. He's been here before, my friend Dan Schlossberg. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing great, Paul. Always nice to talk to you.
You are an absolute pleasure and a delight and a legend in writing. How many, I was going to ask this later, but how many total books have you written about baseball?
Counting Hank Aaron, 40, but I've got 2 more in the works. So a year from now, it'll be 42. Just like Jackie Robinson.
Which is a great number to have. Absolutely. But your favorite player of all time was Hank Aaron, yes?
Oh, by far.
So we got to get.
I've ever seen. Best player I've ever seen, by far.
We've got to get you
then. Somebody named MM with the Yankees, but, you know, look at the numbers.
Yeah, I think Mickey Mantle, you could make an argument, and this, we're right off script already, which is great. I think you could make an argument that there was a period of time when Mantle was as good, if not better, than Willie Mays for a couple of years there. I think if you look at the totality of their careers, Mays is better. I think, obviously, if you look at the totality of their careers, Hank Aaron has the numbers that Willie Mays doesn't have. Do you agree that, or is it your perspective that Hank Aaron is the greatest player of all time, or at least in your lifetime?
In my lifetime, yes. All time, no. Babe Ruth was a pitcher, too, and you can't take that away. He was a very good pitcher. And obviously a legendary guy, a lot of charisma, great player. And he did play for the Braves, so that's good, too.
Now, Dan, did you grow up in New Jersey?
I did. Northern New Jersey.
All right. And you still live in Northern New Jersey, not far from me. And
right.
So tell us how you became a Braves fan in an area when the Yankees dominated and there was still a lot of love for the Dodgers and the Giants and the Mets come around. So tell us how you become a Braves fan.
In 1957, when the Milwaukee Braves won their only World Series, my dad turned down the sound on the old black and white Zenith, and he did the talking to me. And I was 9, and he told me what was going on. Hank Aaron at 393, led both teams in all 3 Triple Crown categories. Lou Burdette won the World Series MVP because he pitched 3 complete games, including 2 shutouts. And I fell in love with the Milwaukee Braves. The Dodgers and Giants were already leaving for California the next year, and everybody I knew rooted for the Yankees. I didn't want to join that crowd. I was a nonconformist from an early age.
That's great. I love it. Yeah, I don't like to talk about the 57 World Series, a little before my time, but obviously the Braves beat the Yankees. Lou Burdette had been a Yankee for a short time, and he wins 3 games against them. As a Yankee fan, I like to think more about 1958. I guess the Yankees got the revenge and beat the Braves that year. So there's our little Yankee stuff. But tell us all about this new book, The Home Run King.
This book has a double meaning in the title. Home Run King, The Remarkable Record of Hank Aaron. When you're talking about the record, it's not just as an athlete, but also as a civil rights advocate. When he came to Atlanta, he met Martin Luther King Sr., Martin Luther King Jr., Ralph David Abernathy, Andrew Young. Jesse Jackson was from Chicago, but he was part of that group also. He came down very often. And Hank Aaron had already met and befriended Jackie Robinson. and meant to carry on Jackie's torch. And Jackie obviously did a lot for civil rights. Hank Aaron did a lot more carrying his torch. He was a spokesman. In fact, 4 Democratic presidents, 4, credited Hank Aaron's campaigning for them with putting them in the White House. Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden, all 4 said the same thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So the stories about Hank Aaron and the home runs and also about civil rights,
home
correct?
Yeah, he had home runs on and off the field is the point of the book. And this is my second Hank Aaron biography because in 1974, just before he broke the record, I came out with a paperback called Hammer and Hank, the Henry Aaron story. That book is different than this book, not just because of the time difference, 50 years, but because that book was written in chronological order. This book was not. It's unusual as a baseball biography because it was written by topic rather than time. Each chapter was treated like a separate magazine article, and it reads like that. I didn't even write the chapters in sequence. The only time I've ever done a book like that.
Which is fantastic. Now, this book, and in the background, you have the entire cover and the endorsements on the back. And you have some of the greatest endorsements. I mean, some of the biggest names in baseball. You want to run through a couple of those?
Sure. Well, Jeff Idelson, a very close personal friend, former PR director of the Yankees, by the way, and longtime PR director of the Baseball Hall of Fame, wrote really, really a nice endorsement for me and arranged for pictures taken by his friend Gene Fruth to be in the book. And this is the first book I've ever done that had color photography in it. And there's beautiful color photography of Hank Aaron at different stages of his career. Some of the pictures that I took of Hank Aaron at Jarry Park in Montreal when I was a college senior at Syracuse University, they're in the book. I mean, I was a friend of Aaron's going way, way back. We met in 1965. Back to the endorsements, I don't want to shortchange anybody. Bruce Markison, the education director of the Baseball Hall of Fame, wrote a nice endorsement. Chip Carey, now at the Cardinals as a broadcaster, formerly with the Braves. And Art Shamsky wrote a beautiful endorsement too, even though he batted .538 against the Braves in the 1969 playoffs. I still haven't forgiven him for that.
Art Shamsky of the New York Mets. Yes, indeed. I mean, that's impressive. So you mentioned that you became, or at least you first met Hank Aaron in 1965. You became friendly with him. As you know, I wrote a book with Roy White, and the experiences I've had with Roy White have been only positive. He is one of the kindest, most generous, humble people in the world that I've ever met. But a lot of people, when they meet their heroes, they end up having clay feet and they become lesser than you would ever hoped. Now, I did not have that experience with Roy White, and I don't believe you had that experience with Hank Aaron. What's Hank Aaron like, or what was he like as a human being?
Polite, humble, introverted, thoughtful, sensitive, caring. He cared about the other guy. In fact, he told his kids, I am not a celebrity. I'm just a man doing a job. And he instilled that in all of his 5 kids. And it really came across well with the Aaron family. And Aaron was kind of the polar opposite of Willie Mays. Willie Mays was flamboyant and charismatic. Hank Aaron was introverted, almost quiet. In fact, Don Drysdale said it looked like he was falling asleep between pitches. Well, he was wide awake once the pitch was coming, that's for sure, especially with the 17 home runs he hit against Don Drysdale.
Now, in the book,
relaxed. He was not asleep.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I'm going to jump in, go back to a question I wanted to ask originally. What's changed in the last 50 years? Because when he broke the home run record, that's now 50 years ago, of course. What's changed about the perception of Hank Aaron over these last 50 years?
If you want to judge by the reception he received from the fans at the Cooperstown Hall of Fame inductions in 2019, the last year he went, I witnessed the loudest and longest standing ovation ever given an incumbent Hall of Famer. That was the respect all the baseball fans who were there showed for Hank Aaron. And there was no Brave going in that year. Chipper Jones had gone in the year before. So it was just remarkable how people revered him. And it took too long. He missed out on some major awards like MVP awards that he should have won. But finally, he got the recognition. I mean, he played in small markets, Milwaukee and Atlanta. Atlanta before the Superstation, a small market city. But it changed, but not when Hank Aaron was a player.
Correct. Now, he is the all-time leader in total bases, the all-time leader in runs batted in. He's second all-time in home runs. He's went to more All-Star games, 25 than any other player. He won an MVP. He won 3 Gold Gloves, which, listen, my favorite player growing up was Greg Nettles, who won only 2. I think I've written articles of the fact that I think Nettles deserved more, and they just gave it to Brooks Robinson just because he was Brooks Robinson. But 3 Gold Gloves for Hank Aaron seems light. And when he was up for the Hall of Fame, I believe 9 people, correct me if I'm wrong, but 9 people didn't even vote for Hank Aaron into the Hall of Fame. So why do you think, for such a great player, all-time in total bases, RBIs, he retires as the home run king, 25 All-Star appearances, why do you think he had so few big awards like MVPs and Gold Gloves, and why did people not vote for him for the Hall of Fame? It just seems absurd.
Well, I agree. I mean, the Hall of Fame thing, you have a 10-man ballot. You could fill out all 10 spots on your ballot. 9 writers didn't put him down even as number 10 on their ballot. I mean, that's incredible to me. And it's got to be a combination of racism, of being ill-informed, not knowing history. I mean, certain writers decide nobody's going to be a first ballot. I'm not going to vote for anybody on the first ballot. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. So he should have been, by all rights, the first unanimous player. And by the way, when he did get into the Hall of Fame in 1982, he did have the highest voting total of anybody after Ty Cobb at that time.
And were there some years, like I was just looking at Henry Aaron's 1959 stats. Ernie Banks, I believe, won the MVP that year. And if you look at WAR, Ernie Banks had more WAR. But it's pretty hard to argue against Hank Aaron being the MVP. He hit 355. He had 39 homers, 123 runs batted in. He led the league in hits with 223. He slugged to 636, leading the league. His on-base plus slugging, which wasn't a stat back then, was over 1,000, 1.037. His OPS plus was 183. He had 400 total bases. All of those led baseball. How does he not win the MVP in some of these years?
Better question would be, how could he not even finish second in any other year?
That's correct.
He won 1 MVP in his career and never finished higher than third any other year.
And he finished third 6 times.
Yeah, that was probably his best year, although 63 was pretty good too. And there were some years later in his career, 71, for example, when he had 40 home runs at the age of 39. I mean, he was a great player. And consistent. Consistency is the name of the game, and that's why Hank Aaron was so good. If you look at Barry Bonds' record for comparison, the only time that Bonds hit as many as 50 home runs was the year he hit 73. So as Yogi Berra would say, something's not kosher in the state of Denmark.
Do you consider Barry Bonds the all-time home run king?
Definitely not. And all the writers who have kept him out of the Hall of Fame agree with me. I'm not alone.
Well, he's not in the Hall of Fame yet. Will he ever be? That'll be the question.
He's off the ballot. And
right, but there's the veterans committees and those things.
Not a shot. He would have less of a chance with all the former Hall of Famers on the veterans committee than he would with the writers.
Interesting.
He's never getting in.
Now, one of the fun things I noticed.
He is never getting in. None of the steroids guys are getting in. And Palmeiro, Sosa, McGuire, that whole crowd, forget it.
Roger Clemens.
Oh, yeah, Roger Clemens. When I interviewed Roger Clemens for my book, the book, The 300 Club, I had promised his agent who arranged the interview I would not mention anything about steroids. But Roger brought it up. He talked about it at length. He talked about it in detail. And he swore up and down that he was innocent, that he never used it. And I kind of think I almost want to give him benefit of the doubt because when he was a player with the Red Sox, he had a clause put into his contract that the team bus on the road had to be smoke-free. In other words, nobody could smoke on the team bus going to the ballpark. Well, Roger was not a popular guy with his teammates. And so most of the Red Sox went into the smoking bus, even those who were non-smokers. And Roger had the non-smoking bus all to himself.
Wow.
But the point is, he made a point about not wanting to put any foreign substance into his body. Why would he do steroids?
So
what can I tell you?
Yeah. So do you see Roger Clemens then having his reputation somehow cleaned someday and getting in the Hall of Fame?
No, because if you repeat the same, let's assume it's a falsehood. If you repeat the same lie over and over again, you start to believe it. And I just think his reputation is shot and he'll never get past it.
That's a shame then. That really is a shame. I noticed in the book, and I never made this connection, that Hank Aaron's name is Henry Louis Aaron.
Yes.
Which is kind of funny because there was another great player named Henry Louis who played for the Yankees. He was a first baseman. I like to say, what's Lou Gehrig's first name? Henry.
Yes, that's right.
So a little note to anyone who's having children out there: if you want your child to have a chance to be a Hall of Famer, one of the greats of all time, you might want to name him, if it's a boy, Henry Louis, and then take your chances, because that's a pretty good crowd there if you have Gehrig and Hank Aaron.
Well, you have lots of Yankees named Aaron Boone. You know, there are a whole bunch of them. Aaron Judge, Aaron Hicks when he was there. A lot of guys.
A lot of guys. Aaron Judge, these last couple years, taking away when he was injured, since 2022, he's probably the best player I've ever seen over an extended period of time. I mean, he has just been otherworldly. How does he compare with how Hank Aaron played in his era? Similar right fielders, big guys. Like how if I was to try to compare Hank Aaron by looking at what Aaron Judge does, where are they similar or different?
To be honest, Paul, I think a better comp is Shohei Ohtani because he steals bases also. Judge, not so much. Judge defensively, he's good. I would not say he's a gold glove caliber, in my opinion. Ohtani doesn't play the field, so it's hard to, but he's a pitcher. So he compensates by being a pitcher. I would like to see Ohtani play the outfield because I imagine he'll be able to throw too. If he was a pitcher, he can certainly throw, right? Now,
I would think so.
Since I mentioned Ohtani, he's a left-handed batter, but a right-handed pitcher, which is strange because if he's pitching and then he comes to bat left-handed, the opposing pitcher can hit him in the right arm deliberately. A little risky.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, a lot of pitchers bat the opposite way, or at least the same way, so that your pitching arm is on the back end.
Yeah.
The foreword to your book was written by Dusty Baker.
Great guy.
And I don't think you don't forgive Art Shamsky. I'm still mad at Dusty Baker for hitting a bunch of home runs against the Yankees in the World Series back in the late 70s and 81 especially. So I'm still angry with him. What do you think about his Hall of Fame chances? Great manager. You think so?
He's in. He was borderline as a player.
Mm-hmm.
He's in as a manager. He's the only manager who took 5 different teams to the playoffs. The only thing missing from his managerial resume was winning a world championship, but he did that a couple of years ago, so he's covered now.
Let me ask you another guy then, because I think Dusty Baker's a slam dunk as well. One guy who was on the ballot, Bill White. Now, he didn't get in. He was in that ballot, I guess, in December. And boy, oh boy, the more you look at Bill White, he, as someone who represented the game, he won, I have his stats up right here. He won 8 Gold Gloves or whatever. Let's say 7 Gold Gloves. He was an 8-time All-Star. He was almost a 300 hitter. He had 286. He had 202 lifetime home runs. He was a classy guy. He was an announcer for a long time. And then he was the first black president of the National League. Do you think someday Bill White finds himself in the Hall of Fame?
The problem with Bill White, he's almost a Hall of Famer in several different categories, but not quite in any of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He's almost there as a broadcaster. He's almost there as a player, but not enough power. He's kind of like the Kirby Puckett of first baseman. For a first baseman, you got to be more of a slugger, and he was not. So he's certainly borderline. So is Keith Hernandez, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
They're not ready for primetime players as far as the Hall of Fame.
Interesting. Who would you consider the top 5 greatest players of your lifetime?
Hank Aaron's number 1. Then it gets harder. I'd probably say Willie Mays would be number 2. And then Frank Robinson, number 3.
You know what? Quick aside, Frank Robinson's another one of these great players that's overlooked. I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame and all, but people never mention him. I'm glad you did, because I mean, his numbers are just eye-popping.
Yeah, and then Roberto Clemente, number 4. The rep against Clemente, again, being not enough home runs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was great outfielder, especially great base runner, hit well every year. And his career was snapped short of 3,000 hits. How much better would he have been if you can't go through the Hall of Fame on would have been? You know, it's like, what if the wind didn't blow in San Francisco? How many home runs would Willie Mays have hit? Or what if Mickey Mantle didn't step in that drain in center field? How many home runs would he have hit? So you can't go on what ifs. So I got to pick one more guy, right?
Yes.
I named 4. It's a tough question. It really is. I'm going to go with, I was going to say Tony Gwynn because he won all those batting titles, but again, not enough power. You got to go with an all-around player. George Brett, same thing, not quite enough power. Hard one. I'm going to wait till later in the interview. I'll come up with another name.
I'm hoping you say a Yankee somewhere in there, and it's my last chance is Mickey Mantle. So,
if I didn't name Mantle, he'd be the guy. He'd be the guy. I'm sorry.
All right, good. Thank you. I'm sure you have. Have you ever read the David Marinus book about Roberto Clemente? It's a number of years old now. Sure. Oh yeah, that's such a story, such a great man. I love that book. And you know, he went into detail. I was just mentioning this to somebody else the other day, but he went into such great detail about the mission that he died on with the airplane and how that all worked out and didn't, you know, how it all played out, I guess is a better way to say it. And it just heart rendering, you know, like you just get so caught up in who this guy was and
oh yeah,
what a player and what a human being. And I think that's so so important. Now, one of the things you also talk about in your book is the fact that Hank Aaron wanted to manage or be a general manager or be the commissioner. How come none of those things ever came to Hank Aaron?
At the time he was around, we're talking mid-'70s, early '70s, there was still a lot of racism in baseball. The Braves did have the first black GM in Bill Lucas, who ironically was Hank Aaron's brother-in-law when Aaron was married to Barbara Aaron. They got divorced. But Bill Lucas was Barbara's brother. And he was the first black GM. He was hired by Ted Turner. So Aaron never really was seriously considered. Maybe Bud Selig would have considered him once he got to the Brewers, except that Turner brought him back to Atlanta as farm director. So once he left the Brewers, that was it. Had he stayed in Milwaukee as some kind of an executive, he might have been a manager or a GM. He even talked about being commissioner of baseball, but he felt that wasn't going to happen. In fact, he was so adamant that baseball was a good old boys club, a white man's club. It's kind of ironic that baseball has now had a Jewish commissioner. So, you know, things do change.
Things do change. And again, as we said a little while ago, I think the reputation of Hank Aaron only continues to grow. He becomes bigger and bigger with each passing day and each passing year. And that's a good thing because he was. And as you said, he wasn't just a great baseball player, but his numbers are eye-popping and off the charts. But he's was a great human being. And I love the fact that he embraced people like yourself and the other fans and that he was humble. because so many people, they just get caught up in, what they did, and look at me, and you have to defer to me. And it's so nice that Hank Aaron isn't that. We're running out of time. So what would you say would be the biggest takeaway from the book that readers will get?
Aaron had to overcome segregation and racial hatred at both ends of his career. When he first broke in, he integrated the all-white Sally League, the South Atlantic League, with Felix Mantilla and one other black player. It was an all-white league. He went through all kinds of aggravation there. At the end of his career, when he was challenging Babe Ruth, there were so many people that didn't want to see a white man's record fall to a black man. He got hate mail. There were death threats against his family. He had to have an FBI agent assigned to him. He had to room apart from the other players on the road, eat in separate restaurants. So we went through the whole thing again, the whole racial thing again. Babe Ruth did not have that when he was going for the record. So what Hank Aaron did was even more remarkable.
Yeah, because of all that pressure. Dan, I want to thank you again. I mean, I could spend 50 million hours just talking baseball with you and hanging out and going through all this. Thank you so much. I hope this book does extremely well, and I look forward to talking to you again, and especially when your next book comes out.
Thank you, Paul. One of the best interviews I've had. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you're much too kind to me. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Have yourself a wonderful day, and I'll talk soon.
Okay, keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the great Dan Schlossberg, who has published a great, great book. Here is the cover one more time. The Home Run King, The Remarkable Record of Hank Aaron. Dan Schlossberg is the author. As we mentioned, Dusty Baker wrote the foreword, endorsed by so many great, great people. As you know, the Dr. Sem Yankee Show and the Start Spreading the News Show are brought to you by Artemisia Publishing, apbooks.net, to get all your other reading material that you'd like. A number of my books have been published by Artemisia, including the Roy White book. And here's a breaking thing. My wonderful novel, Scattering the Ashes, is going to be made into an audiobook in a little over a week. I will be in New York City. I am the voice talent. I don't know if you can put talent underlined or in quotes, but I'll be the one narrating my novel for an audiobook. So we'll keep you updated on that. Thank you again for watching. Remember to always look for the good and have yourselves a wonderful day. This has been the Dr. Sem Yankees and Book Show.